Hello, everyone. On today's podcast, I'm going to talk about something that I've been thinking about for a while. Is that sometimes some people, when you're having a debate with someone, you really have to decide whether that debate is actually worthy, worth having or not. Whether that argument is worth having or not. Because what I realized is that there are many types of people, but there's like generally two types of people when it comes to a debate. People who get to their stance, who got into their stance or their understanding through logic, and people who got there through, illogical thinking. There are people, in this world who just like following others, you know, and then there are people who like to think before they act. If you're debating someone who just likes following others, no matter what you do, you'll never be able to change your stance. And that's one of the problems that's wrong with this world is that there are many scientists, there are many, free thinkers, geniuses, and smart people that think they can convince anyone in this world, as long as they make the logic, the argument logical enough, anybody can follow them. But the truth is that's not how life works. There will always be people that are logical and there will always be people that are illogical. And sometimes it's not a mutual thing. Some people can be logical at times and illogical at times. It's just how life works. There's some things that you're logical about, and there's some things that you're illogical about. Sometimes So what I'm trying to say is, if you're trying to debate someone, if you're trying to change someone's mind, you have to be really careful who you're talking to. You have to be careful who you're debating, who you're trying to have an argument with, because if you're trying to have an argument with someone who didn't get to to their stance, to their mindset using logic, but simply because they just like following somebody else, no matter how logical you are, no matter how wise you are, they will never understand you. Why? Because they didn't get to their understanding. They didn't get to their reasoning through logic. They got it through an illogical method. They just like following others. So if you disagree with the person that they like following, right, they will turn on you very fast. This is why so many Christians in other countries get killed. Because many preachers will go to different countries thinking they can just preach the gospel, and people, as long as they make enough logical sense, people will just follow them. When the truth is, many people do not get to their religion using logic. They got to their religion using many other means. They just like following, what their parents told them, what their aunt told them, what their family told them, what their community told them. That's the only reason why they're in the religion they're in right now, not because they got to got to it through logic. They didn't think their way through. They don't. Most of them don't even read their religious book, just like Christians. Most Christians don't even read their Bibles. They're only Christians because everybody around them is Christian. That's why if you take a Christian out of a Christian nation, you put them in a Muslim nation, most of the time they just become Muslims. You find it baffling, but it's the truth. If you take a Christian out of a Christian country, you put them among Muslims or different, they're slowly over like a few, a long period of time, they'll slowly convert themselves because they didn't become Christians using logic. They didn't become Christians using, due to their own desires to become a Christian. They became Christian because that's what's expected of them to be. Their family members expect them to be Christian. So as long as they're around Christians, no matter what you tell them, they will never understand what you're trying to say. And that's the same thing too with scientists, and atheists and all these. Almost every group always has the large majority that just follows what everyone else is doing. So if you try to convince those type of people, you're just wasting your time. The only people you can convince using logic are other people that got to their current mindset, the current understanding through logic. These are the only people you can convince using logic, which aren't that many. There aren't that many people who actually use logic to get to their understanding. People invest in cryptocurrencies. Not There's many people invest in cryptocurrency not using logic because that's why they can They're so easily manipulated. One moment, the you hear about Bitcoin being banned and they sell the cryptocurrencies. The moment you hear Bitcoin getting an ETF, they come and buy it again. You know, they're not people who actually care about the cryptocurrency. They're just following what everyone else around them is doing. It happens all the time with almost every aspect of life. There will always be people that just follow what everyone else around them is doing. And if you try to convince them that cryptocurrencies are good, if it's someone that's already, that's been brainwashed to like cryptocurrencies, you tell them all the downsides of having a cryptocurrency or buying cryptocurrencies for the economy, for the U.S. government, for the entire world in general. They won't understand what you're trying to tell you. They'll just think you're trying to attack them. You're trying to change their mind. They don't want you to change their mind. They want to be with the friends and family who likes cryptocurrencies. They want to enjoy, that camaraderie of being around friends and family that likes cryptocurrencies. They didn't choose to buy cryptocurrencies because they liked cryptocurrencies. They didn't choose to buy cryptocurrencies because they understood cryptocurrencies. They chose to buy cryptocurrencies because their friends and families are buying cryptocurrencies. And that's all. That's the only reason why they need to buy cryptocurrencies, because they want to be around their friends and family. They like that group activity of buying cryptocurrencies with their friends and family. They don't treat cryptocurrencies as a life or death thing where they have to actually do research on it. They treat it like a joke, like a game. They play with their friends. When their friends get bored playing it, they'll get bored playing it. When the friends get bored being Christians, they'll get bored being Christians. When the friends get bored being scientists, hey, they get bored being scientists and leave it. It's not really done through their own critical thinking. They just follow what everyone else is doing. And that's just pretty much how life is. There are people who think before they choose a certain hobby, before they choose a certain ideology, and then there's the majority of people who it's just too much effort. It's best to just follow your friends and family. Just let them decide. What ideology you should follow. Let the people. Let the influential people in your life decide what ideology you follow, and just follow them. And this is why there's always so many disclaimers. When it comes to cryptocurrencies, when it comes to information. This is why celebrities always get in trouble, promoting cryptocurrencies, because the vast majority of people who buy the cryptocurrencies that these celebrities promote do not think deeply about whether this they don't do any research on the cryptocurrencies that they buy. They have no idea how cryptocurrencies even work. They're only buying it because the celebrity's buying it. That's all. So people like that, you have to really be careful, because you just can't change their mind. No matter what you do, you just can't change their mind. If a celebrity tells them to believe in God, they'll believe in God. If the celebrity they like tells them to believe in God, they'll believe in God. If a celebrity they like tells them that he's an atheist, guess what? They're an atheist. If it's a celebrity that tells them they're bi, guess what? They're bisexual now. They follow what influential people and the people around them do. And no matter how logical you are, it is almost impossible for you to tell them, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, or why are you doing this? There's so many things wrong with doing this. Why are you doing it? It's impossible for you actually to tell these people that they're doing something wrong, or they should be doing something slightly different, or they should come at something, in a different manner. They should behave slightly differently. It's harder because these people do not follow. They don't care about logic, man. They didn't get there logically. They got there illogically. And the only way to change someone's mind who got to their position illogically is to use an illogical argument. I won't give you examples of how to use an illogical argument, but you have to use illogical ways to convince someone who got to their stance illogically. If you use logic with someone who doesn't think logically, or who didn't get to their reasoning logically, you're wasting your time. There's so many, you can use an example of illogical ways is fallacies. There's so many fallacies out there that you can use to convince an illogical person. There's so many fallacies out there you can use to convince an illogical person to do what you want them to do. But if you use these fallacies, then you're doing exactly what you shouldn't do. Manipulate people with lies. So if you manipulate people with lies instead of using the truth, it'll always come back to you at the end of the day, because if they end up at some point in time, they end up realizing that you're lying to them, or they ask their friends and family who may be smarter, who may be this very smart person, and that friend or family tells them, hey, because every family member, every family unit has people who just follow one person or two people. Usually maybe their parents, maybe it's their aunt, their uncle, but like a family unit, a friend of family unit, there's like the followers and there's the leaders. People that lead automatically, when the person talks, everybody just listens to them. When the person decides on a certain subject, even though they argue and yell, they end up just following that person anyways. If that person, who's usually the smartest one in the group, tells them, um, um, is told your illogical arguments that convince them. If one of their family members tell them, hey, this guy said this, use this ad hominem, or use this fallacy to disprove you, and the guy, listens to your argument, your illogical argument, and realizes you're just lying to him. Guess what? Now everybody in that social network, now everybody in that group knows you're a liar. Everybody in that group knows you're a snake. You're trying to manipulate people with lies, and probably not good for your reputation. So although you can get away with convincing an illogical person with an illogical argument, that's usually the way to convince an illogical person, using an illogical argument, using fallacies, using manipulations, using scare tactics. These are the ways you convince an illogical person to do what you want them to do. But if you don't, but there's it's a double-edged sword, in that if you use an illogical argument, you can end up getting yourself in trouble. If you use an illogical argument with someone who's not, they didn't think things through. For a fact they didn't think things through. But because they didn't think things through, they're not going to think things through now that you're telling them that you're using logical facts in front of someone who doesn't want to hear it. You using logical facts, logical reasoning in front of someone who doesn't want to hear it, it's not going to work. They just laugh at you, for just being too annoying. They just think of you as an enemy. It's just wasting their time. So you really have to be careful, how you go about convincing illogical people, because convincing illogical people is hard. Using violence to convince an illogical person usually has the opposite effect. Violence, or it comes from the phrase. The reason I say this, there's a phrase called resistance is given assistance. That means the more you resist something, the more you assist it. And I believe that's true with violence. If you use violence to get your way, sooner or later you'll realize it doesn't work. If you use violence to harm someone, then they become what? They become angry. They become upset. And they're less likely to listen to you when they know you're a violent lunatic. They just think you as an enemy, as a devil, as a creature, as an evil creature. And no one likes to listen to evil creatures. No one likes to listen to devils. No one likes to listen to evil people, trying to convince them using violence, So there's so many ways you can go about this, but the best way is just, you can either try to convince them using logic until they, or, you try to convince the smartest one in the group using logic. Hopefully that person can convince everybody else. Or that usually works, convince the smartest one, in their friend group, and then the one they listen to the most. If you can convince that person, you can convince the rest of them, because it's not really about convincing the rest of them. The rest of them just follows, like they follow just one or two group of people without really thinking too much about it. Then the rest just follows along. The rest just follow along. So if you're in a debate with someone, you just have to think who you're debating. Are you debating someone who got there through logic, or are you debating someone who's no different from a parrot? Parrots, they just parrot what someone else has told them. They just regurgitate what someone else has given, the information that someone else has given to them, without really thinking about, does this information even make any logical sense? Are you the person you got this information, did he think things through logically? Because I've seen so many debates where the person just copies what someone else has said, And yet the thing the person copied just doesn't. It didn't make sense to begin with, but yet here they are, person after person, using the same argument that makes illogical sense over and over again. You think it's just small people, but no, these are major debaters. I've been watching debates for like years. I stopped watching debates like 5 years ago because at some point in time I just realized it's just two close-minded people, arguing and yelling and talking about things they don't care about. They've already made up their minds because they're in a group of people that already believe something, and nothing you do will ever change their minds. Because they didn't get there through logic. So no matter how logical you are, it doesn't matter because they didn't get there through logic. So what is logic gonna do? Do you think they'll listen to you? They first have to listen to you first before you can use logic on them. If they don't even listen to you to begin with, what's the point? You can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. You can write and write and write. You can write article after article, book after book. You can go through seminars after seminars. It doesn't matter. They still won't listen to you. Why? Because they're only following their friends and families, man. They're only following the celebrities that they like. As long as the celebrities go against what you're saying, they'll go against it by default. They don't care about the truth. It's not about the truth. It's about following their friends and family. If the friends and family go against you, they're going against you by default. That's how it works. It's not about logic. It's not about that's usually how you get to where you are right now. Is because hey, someone influential in your life, told you X or Y, and without you really thinking whether they're lying to you or whether they're telling the truth, you just accepted it, and that's pretty much just how most people are because most people are just too busy with their lives already. There's so many things to do in life, man. There's so many things that bog you down. So I won't blame them, for having that mindset because you have to you have to work, you have kids to feed. Life isn't as easy as you think it is. Where you have time to just do whatever you want and think things through. Do your own research and all that. Sometimes there's just too much going on in life. There's just way too much going on in life that most people have to go through on a daily basis. Some people lose their family members on a daily basis, man. Some people have they work with bad coworkers that assault and abuse them. There's just so much going on in life, in every person's life, that they don't have time to be going through all this debate. Even people that don't have jobs, or they don't have to work with someone else. They have their own, they have their own business, their own solo business that only depends on them and them alone. They still have so much to do, so many deadlines to meet, so much paperwork. Creating games, creating anything requires a lot of effort and stress. So they're spending all their time doing what they can to live and survive. They don't have that time to spend trying to study and learn and do this and do that. So when someone else, that's why they just follow what the person they trust tells them, because it's easier to just follow the person you trust when it comes to certain things because it's just too much stress. Life is just already very stressful as it is. Life is stressful as it is. So what's the point of over stressing over every single ideology that comes to your doorstep? Why do you have to stress over every single thing in life? There's already so many things you have to the average person has to go through in life. In terms of family, in terms of friends, in terms of just the interrelationship that life brings them. Life itself is already very stressful. People die every single day. People get mauled and people have diseases. There's just so much going on in life, man, that is very hard for the average person to be taking the time to research this, research that, reason this, reason that. Life is very stressful as it is. So it's understandable that someone who's already very stressed out would just listen to a celebrity that they trust. If the celebrity tells them to buy cryptocurrency, might as well just buy it. You never know what will happen. So that's really just you have to see things from both points of views. From the point of view of the person trying to reason to them when they don't listen, and then from the point of view of the person who will never listen to you, because they already have so much going on in their minds already, man. They don't have time to be listening to your logic. They don't have time to be listening to all your reasonings, man. They just want to get through their day. They've had enough already, man. Leave them alone. So you also have to worry about that part of you. That point of view as well. But If you're dealing with someone that's illogical, you just have to know they're illogical, and using logic with someone that's illogical may not get what you want. It may get you exactly what you don't want: violence, mockery, insults, abuse, torture, kidnappings, bullying, death. You know, so you have to really be careful who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a logical person, you'll know. A logical person will let you speak, an illogical person will try to talk over you, you know. A logical person will let you speak and get through, and then think about the things you just told them before they reply. An illogical person will just, as you're speaking, they try to speak over you, you know. If you deal with someone that speaks over you, the moment you start talking to them, just walk away, or just remain silent. You will never be able to get into their mind because they don't want to listen to you. They want to speak. They don't want to listen. They want to speak. So even if you force them to sit down and shut up, right? To sit down and shut up. Even if you force them to shut up because, hey, they're always talking over you. Guess what? While they're shutting up, right? While you think they're listening to you, when you talk over them, they're not listening to you. They're thinking about thoughts in their own head. They're thinking about counters to counter you. They're not paying attention to anything you're saying. They're too busy thinking about how to mock you, how to insult you, versus, to be paying attention to what you're trying to tell them. So if you ever get into debate or argument with someone and they start talking over you, just know you're talking to the wrong person. They're not going to listen to you in any way, shape, or form. And if you're going to use violence, they just say, they're, if depending on the situation, if you're like, someone like Hitler, you want to use violence to get your way, go ahead. But, every time you use violence, there's always consequences. You can't expect to be, to not have violence done to you if you use violence against others. You can't expect, if you kill someone, expect to be killed. If you punch someone, expect to be punched. If you kick someone, expect to be kicked. That's how life works. It's not, you don't get a free pass to harm others. If you harm others, expect to be harmed as well. So that's really how life works. So, and at the same time, if you respect others, expect to be respected. If you let the illogical person go, let them just speak. If he's speaking over you, if he's talking over you, just let him talk over you. You just move on with your life. You already at that point in time, you know he's not someone that, he or she's not someone that's going to listen to you to begin with. But someone who's going to listen to you will shut up and let you talk. And then think about what you just said before replying. If they don't think about what you're saying before they reply, they just reply right away. Just know they didn't listen to a single word you said. And this is not someone you can convince. Only someone they trust can convince them. You're not someone they trust. And if you're not someone they trust, no matter what you say, you'll never be able to convince them. Only their friends and family members or people they respect can convince them. People they respect, like celebrities and, public spokespeople, these are the people that can convince them. People they respect, not you. You're not one of them. No one knows you there, If they don't know you like that, you have to understand that they don't know you like that. You're not someone they trust. If you're not someone they trust, it doesn't matter. You can talk all day and all night. They just think you're just, you're Satan trying to you're Satan trying to delude them. You're trying to corrupt them. That's what they think you are. You're someone trying to corrupt them. So as a Christian, you have to think about this when you're trying to convince other people. As a Muslim or as a scientist, trying to convince Christians about, these are the things you have to understand about life, is that not everyone can be convinced, not everyone can be convinced, in life, some people you just can't, and you just have to deal with it, That's also what I've understood in life as well. That's why I don't really like debates, because it doesn't really do anything. I don't like debating anyone. The moment an argument starts, I just accept whatever they say and just move on with my life, I rarely ever listen to someone who yells at me for any reason. I rarely ever listen to someone who mocks me in any way, because at that point in time I already know there's no point in talking to someone that makes no logical sense, But that's life, man. I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.